Assalamu alaikum. Today, our lecture will be about the hindgut. Before we start talking about the development of the hindgut, you have to differentiate between the two terms, the proctodium and the stomodium. Proctodium, or the anal pit, is the primordial anus, whereas the stomodium is the primordial mouth. Both these areas, ectoderm is in direct contact with the endoderm without intervening mesoderm. The mesentery. Portions of the gutted tube and its derives are suspended from the dorsal and ventral body wall by the mesenteries. These mesenteries are double layers of peritoneum. Their function is to enclose an organ and connect it to the body wall. Such organs are named the intraperitoneal. The retroperitoneal organs, they lie against the posterior body wall and are covered by peritoneum on their anterior surface only. So, mesenteries are double layers of peritoneum that pass from one organ to another or from one organ to the body wall. These mesenteries provide pathways for blood supply, nervation, and lymphatics to and from the abdominal viscera. Now, the hindgut, it's the posterior or the caudal part of the alimentary canal. It extends from the left or the distal one-third of the transverse colon to the cloaca. The blood supply is through the inferior mesenteric artery. It consists of the following structures: the transverse colon, as I mentioned, the distal one-third, the descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and anal canal. Here you can see this part represents the hindgut. It ends with the cloaca. It's the terminal end of the hindgut. Development of the hindgut. The terminal portion of the hindgut enters into the posterior region of the cloaca or the anorectal canal. This is the anorectal canal. You can see this part represents the anorectal canal. The blood supply, we said that it's through the inferior mesenteric artery. So the junction between the segment of the transverse colon derived from the midgut, which is the proximal two-third, and the part that is originated from the hindgut, which is the distal one-third, it's indicated by the change in the blood supply. Now, partitioning of the cloaca. The cloaca is an endodermally lined cavity. It represents the terminal end of the gutted tube. It has a diverticulum, which is named the allantois, and the cloacal membrane, as you can see here, it separates the cloaca from the proctodium or the anal pit. During development, this sheet of mesenchymal tissue, it separates the cloaca into two parts, the ventral urogenital sinus and the dorsal, which is the anorectal canal. This sheet, these are two parts. This is the urogenital sinus and this is the anorectal canal. Now we are going to mention some abnormalities that occur during development of the hindgut. For example, the oesophageal It usually results from abnormal division of tracheoesophageal septum. The fetus suffers from difficulty in swallowing. This result in polyhydramnios or excessive amount of amniotic fluid because this fluid cannot pass into the intestine for return to the maternal circulation. You can see the blind end of the oesophagus. This is oesophageal. This is the tracheoesophageal fistula. Annular pancreas. The ventral and dorsal pancreatic buds, they form a ring around the duodenum. thereby causes its obstruction. You can see these two parts of the pancreas, they are surrounding the duodenum and causing its obstruction. Now, on phalloceal, the midgut fails to retract into the abdominal cavity during its rotation process. At birth, coils of intestine covered with only a transparent sac of amnion, they protrude from the umbilicus, as you can see in this picture. Malnutrition of the midgut. Here, the midgut does not rotate normally as it retracts into the abdominal cavity. It's presented as symptoms of intestinal obstruction shortly after birth. This malrotation also predisposes the infant to volvulus case of the midgut, wherein the intestines bind and twist around a short mesentery. So this volvulus usually interferes with the blood supply to a section of the intestine. This will result in necrosis and gangrene. As you can see here, this picture shows the volvulus. Here the blood supply can't reach part of the intestine, leading to necrosis and gangrene. Stenosis and atresia of the small intestine. Failure of recanalization of the ileum during the solid stage of development leads to narrowing or stenosis or atresia. It means complete obstruction of the intestinal lumen. Some stenosis and atresias may be caused by an infarction of the fetal bowel owing to impairment of its blood supply. This is the small intestine here, and this is the blue color represents the large intestine. Atresia, it means closed or absent. Also, may be associated with stenosis or the narrowing of this intestine. Anorectal agencies, where there is abnormal formation of the urorectal septum, causing the rectum to end as a blind sac above the puborectalis muscle. This is the site of this muscle. Here you can see this is the normal anatomy, and whereas here they can see the blind end of the large intestine where the anal opening is missing. Thank you for your listening.